couldn't be more pleased to see the turnout tonight. I think it says so much for our community that our citizens turn out to hear what the candidates have to say and to turn in your questions. I, again, myself want to thank the candidates for taking time out of what I know is a very busy schedule right now, and to all of you for being here, and to all of you that submitted questions, because I think it is so important for everyone to be concerned and to be knowledgeable about what's happening in our community. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the rules of engagement for tonight. This is a nonpartisan forum, and it is also not a debate. So all the questions have been submitted in advance. The candidates have them, and they're available to you, I think, on the back table if you've not already picked up one, if you want to make notes, and they're there for you. So what's going to happen is that each of the candidates is going to get 2 minutes to introduce themselves and just very briefly say their vision for Slidell, and their thoughts about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then after that, we'll go directly into the questions, and each one of the candidates will get to answer each of the questions. They'll have 2 minutes to do it. And there are quite a few questions, so it's going to move pretty rapidly. And then at the end, though, there will be 2 minutes for each to summarize, and they can pretty much do that as they wish. They can finish questions they didn't have time to elaborate on. They can summarize any way that they want to, and that will be it. And so with that, I think we'll launch right into our introduction of our candidates tonight. So our first question and introduction for each of you is going to be to describe your vision for Slidell that incorporates its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we're going to start with Mr. Clement, and the rest of the questions I will alternate who we start with so that it's not always exactly in the same order. But we'll start with Mr. Clement on that one. That's right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Case, and good evening, everyone. I would also like to echo the sentiments of appreciation to Old Town, Slidell Main Street, and all of you for submitting such phenomenal questions and for your participation in what is going to be the next level of our city government. I moved here with my family in 1955 and have had an opportunity to watch the metamorphosis of what I consider a small town into something that is very dynamic. We're at a crossroads, though. We have an opportunity to take our city from where it is today to build upon the foundation that our forefathers have so boldly put in place, and for us to be able to expand upon our assets. Our strengths, of course, are we're at the intersection of 3 major interstates. We have water surrounding us everywhere that allows us fishing, hunting, water sports. We have these opportunities. We look at what's happening with Stennis. We look at Michoud. We see phenomenal growth beginning to reemerge in those centers. Our opportunities are to find linkages and to find collateral and vertical businesses that can work with us to be able to provide employment. I think the threats that we have are some of the threats that we are experiencing throughout many of our cities. We have flooding issues. We have an opportunity to make sure that we have a safe environment for our city. Public safety is one of our major concerns. In my career, which has spanned over 40 years in healthcare, I had an opportunity to take a small rural community hospital and turn it into a comprehensive medical center that is now a regional destination. We have opportunities to create more of a medical corridor and to be able to build upon the strengths in those organizations that I had the privilege of being the chief operating officer for. So my vision for Slidell is that of hope, is that of growth, and that is making it a place where our children can return to good paying jobs by bringing companies here that will provide that.
Thank you. All right, next, Mr. Cromer.
Thank you, Ms. Case, and thanks to the Old Town Main Street Board for hosting this forum. Thank you to our citizens community. I don't think I've ever seen this chamber have this many people in it. That's a commendation to our community and the interest in this. We have 4 good candidates for running for Mayor Slidell. You've got to actually have a chance to make a decision, and you haven't had it in a long time, maybe. I think most of us will agree that Slidell has seen significant change in the past several decades. The interstate system that we have surrounding us is an economic hub. It brings commerce and industry into our community. It's a selling point. It also enables a Cromer element to reach us that we haven't experienced in the past. Hopefully we can keep that from happening in the future. The after effects of Hurricane Katrina, we saw an economic surge, if you will, with the influx of money that came in the community from state and federal grants and resources to build us back, put us back together. I also saw a huge influx of new citizens to our community. So we had phenomenal growth really quickly, which put a severe burden on our infrastructure. The next mayor, Slidell, is going to have to manage the resources and the infrastructure that we have through growth into the future with a vision for what we're going to look like in the future. My experience as state legislator, city councilman, and in industry has prepared me to be able to guide us and lead us into that future. It's given me opportunities to make connections with business and industry that can bring the type of jobs that we need in our community, to grow our community and create opportunities for our kids to live, work, and play. We have to manage that. Okay, it's time. That was real quick. Thank you.
Let's go back to her. All right, we'll ask the same question of you, Mr. Cusimano.
Thank you, Ms. Gates, and I want to thank you also and Mrs. DeLong and the board members for having us here tonight. The mayor and the city council must continue to provide the basic services that the citizens need and deserve. We have the money to do that, but in addition, we must conceive and articulate a vision for making Slidell an even greater place. The mayor has to lead that effort. I will be that leader. Being raised in Slidell, I have seen many changes. Through those many changes, during good times and bad, Slidell has always come out on top. One of our many strengths is the people that call Slidell home. The people that teach our children, volunteer to coach our kids, and the citizens that help our elderly. We need to continue to support every citizen. Crime is considered a weakness. The opioid epidemic itself causes other crimes to be committed. We, as the city, need to stay diligent and make sure we give our police department the necessary tools to accomplish this. We need to get our friends and family the help they need to fight this. We need to get our friends and family to help fight for this, We can create opportunities through economic development and job creation. A premier opportunity through economic development and job creation. The premier opportunity is restoring and redeveloping Old Town, and I will look at ways to accomplish this. We need to restore our sense of pride in our community. Through code enforcement, we can make our neighborhoods look even better. Anyone who knows me knows that this is one of my pet peeves and that I take a strong stance on this. Also, being irresponsible with our tax dollars for any reason would not be accepted when I am mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Good evening. Thank you, Brenda, and to the Old Town Slidell Main Street Board. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and certainly to all those citizens who turned out this evening to hear the four what I call great candidates for the city of Slidell and for our future. Yes, for those that I haven't met and don't know me, my name is Kevin Davis. I'm a lifelong Slidell resident, and I actually grew up in Westchester subdivision on the south end of town. I was a small business owner for 30 years here in Slidell on Pontchartrain Drive, and that's where I began my first career into politics. Because of owning a business, I said, you know, the rules and regulations and things that business has to go through, I want to know how I can make those changes. So I ran for police jury and won, served 12 years on parish government as police jury, and then was on the charter commission so that we could change our parish government and have a parish president elected by the entire parish. And I had that great honor to serve as your parish president for 12 years, learning and putting together this entire parish and working with all our municipalities for the future and for the benefit. And then after that, I served for 4 years as the Secretary of Homeland Security for the state of Louisiana, which was very exciting. Worked with the city of Slidell on all the money that they're actually getting from FEMA. I was the one that took them to Denton so that we could secure those funds to help us here for our flooding streets and sewer and water. Katrina and other disasters taught us all of Slidell's needs and struggles. In those struggles, we saw many of our Slidell residents leave the area. As your mayor, I intend to bring more industry and opportunities to all of our citizens. New industry in technology, research, manufacturing, and distribution. We can find jobs. I see all the time there's jobs. There are jobs all around us. But what we need is to create opportunities for careers, long-term careers. I want to make Slidell a community that sustains its citizens, and with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right, we'll start with our first question. And since we started with Mr. Clement last time, we'll start with Mr. Cromer this time. This is a bonus question based on recent events of the last week. Some of you saw all the police cars around the post office. When was it, Friday? Last week anyway. And so the question is, with the recent news of the bomb scare at the U.S. Post Office, how does your plan address the needs of the people with mental illness, as well as the safety of the public in these institutions?
Well, first and foremost, I'd stay out of the way of our fine law enforcement agencies and their affiliated state and federal agencies whenever they have to go to work in that situation. Their mission is to safe and secure that scene, that, if you will, and assure that nobody gets hurt. But I'd also work with our coroner and the mental health agencies within the community to assure that the individual that has mental health issues that may be involved in that situation would get the resources, treatment, and services they need to make them better, assure that they're not a threat or hazardous to themselves or anybody around in the community. One of the things that our office would do is work in conjunction with Police Chief Vandal to assure that we have a strong protocol and procedure to address that issue in a timely fashion when it would come up.
Thank you. Mr. Cusimano.
Yes, thank you. I also will work with Chief Vandal and the police to make sure they have the proper equipment so they can do their job. And two, I also will work with the local organizations and the coroner's office also, and to see if we can get some help for our people who are in need of mental health. That's one thing about this parish. We are kind of lacking when it comes to health care for our people who have suffered. You know, the mind is the same thing. You know, it gets sick also. And we need treatment for our citizens who suffer from such mental illness. And one thing that I'm proud of is our police department. One thing as a mayor, you know, it's part of the branch of our government, the executive branch, to help make sure that it's properly funded and that Chief Vandal and then the police officers have the proper equipment to deal with the bomb scare, as what we had just a few days ago, and the equipment, you know, the dog, the robot, the equipment for the personnel, and that costs money. And one thing we need, you know, one thing we are lacking, we don't have a lot of funds, and we need to make sure that we are safe. And one thing about what makes the city important, what's the two things? Feeling safe is one. The second thing is getting water, clean water and sewer. So I'll continue to support police. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Yes, thank you, Brenda. Certainly working closely with law enforcement, but it would be all of the partners that we need to work with. I happened to be here that Saturday when that event happened, and it reminded me of what I had started when we had the suicide rate was the highest in the state of Louisiana. As I was parish president, the rate still is up. It's not as bad. But one of the things that we did a 3-tier program. First was our response with our local law enforcement and training of those officers how to deal with mental health. Because what we don't want to do is just take that person and go put them in the parish jail. So what we need to do is make sure that that response and law enforcement are supported in dealing with that particular issue. Then what I did was work with our 22nd Judicial Court system, because at the same time when that individual had an issue and law enforcement picked them up, I didn't want to just take them directly to the parish prison, as I mentioned earlier, and just put them there, because that doesn't help anybody, the family or anybody or the individual, to get and seek help. So what we did was we used that three-tier program with the court system also. So what happens if that individual doesn't go to doesn't take their medicine or see their doctors or those nonprofit agencies that we've got that help them. And now we have Fontainebleau State Park that the parish has developed for response. Then what happens is the court can put them in jail if necessary. And you use that as a tool to make sure that we keep them in seeing their local physicians and helping them with their mental illness. And I think that's the key, because we don't want to just keep putting people in jail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clement.
Thank you, Ms. Case. I also had an opportunity to be tied up in the activities at the post office the other night, and I will say that the response that our city had was nothing short of exemplary, which is what we would expect. I think I would like to dive a little deeper than the other candidates have in this issue. Mental health is not just a problem in our city or in our state. This is a crisis in the country. And we have not taken the adequate steps as a country to properly fund mental health issues. Now, we are working very closely in my most recent employment. We're working with current parish government to ensure that we have an opportunity for those folks that have mental health issues and are in crisis mode, that we can transition them not to our jail system, but into a system where they can possibly get more treatment. The good news is that the federal government is finally beginning to realize, as of recent legislation, recent writing, that funding is going to be required to be restored so that we can begin and continue to provide services to treat people with mental illness. It is a disease, and it is something that can be treated, but it takes funding to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. All right, our next question, we're going to shift to economic development. And the question is, please list at least 3 types of economic development solutions that you would like to see in Slidell. Also, please tell us how you would go about attracting them, why you are the best person to recruit them, and what measurable outcomes would you consider necessary to see these new ventures as successes. For this one, we're going to start with Mr. Cusimano.
Can you do me a favor, repeat the questions?
Okay. Please list, yeah, it's kind of multi-part.
Yes, it is.
Please list at least 3 types of economic development solutions that you would like to see in Slidell. Also, please tell us how you would go about attracting them, why you are the best person to recruit them, and what measurable outcomes would you consider necessary to see these new ventures as successes.
Thank you. The first thing I would like to do when I become mayor, I would like to form a economic development board, and I would like to get an unpaid, all volunteer commissioners to be on this board, and hopefully to hire a full-time economic developer as the director. Then we, I will work with this board, and I will continue as a sale, to sell the city of Slidell and use the Slidell as a product to present and say why we need economic development in the city. Showcase Slidell. What makes Slidell look great? We need, to showcase our neighborhoods. We need to showcase why is the best place to live, and we need to make the Slidell the best place to live. And to list the 3 economic things I will go after, we need to have tech jobs, distribution, and healthcare. Why distribution? Because we're very close to the interstate system, and the healthcare, we have a great hospital with here at Slidell Mayoral, and it's partnered with Oshner. We need doctor's offices, we need healthcare facilities, we need health clinics, and my job as a salesperson, I can sell the city of Slidell and tell them and show them why it's the best place to live. Thank you.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, thank you, Brenda. The first three would be, as I already really mentioned earlier with technology, one of the interesting aspects of that is we talk about our children. So do people in the audience. I've had conversations where they said their children are going to Baton Rouge to school, they won't come home on the weekend. Say, Mom and Dad, there's really nothing there for us. What we got to do is develop that technology to keep those millenniums, as we call them, in our own communities. How do we do that? I think that I already have the experience previously when we moved folks, engineers from Norway to St. Tammany Parish. There was about 40 of them who do manufacturing and engineering technology here in St. Tammany, where you can operate a ship from anywhere in the world from right here in St. Tammany. But that's just an example. One of the things that we found that was very critical to the technology aspect of research was broadband, the internet. I don't know how many of you have the internet at home, but I can tell you I have it, I pay extra for it, I ask for the highest speed I can get, and there's nights that I can't get on. That's unacceptable. We cannot attract businesses to St. Tammany Parish, to Slidell, or even outside our great city, with that kind of T1 line. There actually is a T1 line that runs all the way down the interstate system. State of Louisiana owns it, DOTD, it's a fiber line. It's got plenty of additional fiber in it, so I think we need to start that discussion with the state of Louisiana about us here in the city tying into that. You could use it for educational, technology, manufacturing, research, and certainly distribution. And the other thing that we could do is we have to look outside of Slidell. We have to look at those other communities. Look at even Baton Rouge. Right now, their millennium are staying in Baton Rouge after they graduate from LSU. New Orleans has still got some issues, and I know we got a question in reference to some technology companies. But we can learn from those other companies, other communities, and then a measurable outcome will be the increase in population and the increase in our jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clement?
Thank you very much. Well, the three types of economic development I would like to address relate back to my over 10 years of experience on the Economic Development Foundation for St. Tammany Parish. We have an opportunity on the foundation to bring thousands of jobs, hundreds of companies, and a couple of very large companies into the Slidell area. We need to look at continuing to expand our distribution opportunities and our distribution centers. We need to look at the opportunity for redevelopment of the North Shore Mall. We could take that and turn it into a technology park, or we could turn it into something, even another retail site if necessary. We have an opportunity to look at our airport. Our airport is undersized right now for any type of cargo services that are coming in. So we need to go from a 5,000 foot to maybe a 10,000 foot runway. That's going to take working with Camp Hillary and trying to find a way to maybe relocate them to 433 where there's plenty of land. Additionally, we want to, as I mentioned earlier, we have great opportunities and expansions that are occurring at Michoud and at Stennis. We need to find a way to leverage those companies to find ways to bring those people to live here, and then to look at collateral or vertical companies that could come in and provide additional employment for our millennials. I think that's what Kevin was referring to. So what I would tell you is we have an opportunity for some redevelopment. We have an opportunity to use what we have. But economic development is great. We talk about bringing all these companies in. But the other side of economic development is you better find a way to keep what you got. And for us to be able to keep what we got, we've got to reduce bureaucracy, we've got to make it easier for companies to come here, and we've got to streamline our processes so that it doesn't take so long and we make it so onerous for people to come here to try to open a business or expand a business. In my 33 years of working here in Slidell, I can tell you I interface with lots of companies that are experiencing those delays. I think that's the bell. Huh?
That's the bell. Thank you. Mr. Cromer?
Thank you, Ms. Case. One of my functions in the private sector and one of my last jobs was business development, bringing jobs and opportunities to our area. I was on the team revitalized Michoud at the downturn of the space shuttle system. We put movie industry in there. We made sound stages and we're making movies. We put Vivace Corporation that builds tanks for satellites, fuel tanks for satellites. We put Blade Dynamics that builds 140-meter long blades for wind turbines. I know the folks that are in the industry. We've got all kinds of good stuff happening around us. You look down in New Orleans at the business incubators and the warehouse district where there's tech industry going in, code writers developing new codes, new technologies to service businesses and industries. You look in Baton Rouge, you've got entertainment arts, where they actually are writing and creating video games for the industry. IBM is there producing code for the commercial sector, and you look back to home, Michoud is building the Space Launch System, which is the next generation space vehicle. We're testing rocket engines. It's Stennis. All these companies are big, major, multinational corporations. We're not going to land one of those, but we don't need to land one of those. What we need to do is land the companies that supply their product, their nuts and bolts, their seats, their steel that they utilize to make their products. We need to bring the companies in that sell the computers and software packages that these code writers utilize to develop their products. We've got great opportunities to repurpose storefronts, vacant storefronts, the mall, the old mall, the outlet mall. Those places could be turned into business incubators that could support those types of industry. I've been there, done that. I know how to do it.
Thank you. Our next question. Flooding and flood insurance premium increases are a threat to our local economy. What role do you feel the city of Slidell could play in minimizing the impact of these problems, and what strategies would you use to minimize flooding in Slidell? And we'll start with Mr. Davis on this one.
Great, thank you, Brenda. Great question. I was really excited when I saw this one because this is our detriment. We talked about earlier what's going on in Slidell. This is a huge issue. So what it needs is a leadership role as a voice for funding. Number one, I developed a levy to help protect Slidell. I was able to get the grants, and we did the first 2 phases. Phase 3 is now going on right now on Highway 11. But that was to protect about 30-some thousand people. And what happens if you can develop that levy, then you reduce your insurance costs here within the confines of the levy. So the first thing that I would do is continue that leadership roles and that voice in Congress and others for that funding of those levee and drainage projects. Now there's several. One right now is going on. You have CPRA that just awarded St. Anthony Parish $2 million to review that. You know, my feelings are what we should do is take some of those dollars immediately and continue the levy on over to the Kings Point area, which will then protect us on our eastern flank. I also would request additional hazard mitigation funds as the Secretary of Homeland Security. All of the federal funds that came through the state of Louisiana came through my office. My budget was $1.2 billion. What we did was we facilitate moving those dollars down to the local level so that we could do drainage projects that would help more than one person. At the same time, we need to take advantage of the hazard mitigation program that we could raise additional houses. But I got to tell you folks, I was walking in Westchester. It broke my heart. I grew up there, raised there. I see the houses on the slab and I see one house 8 feet in the air. You know, that's not a very good plan. What we need to do is build that levee system so that we don't have to do that, just like they have in the city of New Orleans. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turner.
Well, I couldn't agree more with Mr. Davis about the opportunity to continue to fund the levee system. Unfortunately, the governor made a decision because of the $1 billion shortfall that we have at the state level in the state budget that he line item vetoed a lot of that funding out. So I think as mayor, the opportunity and the challenge that I would have would be to go back and to work with the legislators and to work with the governor to find a way that we could reallocate money to come back to this area. Now, we had an opportunity to work over the last several months on something called LA Safe, which was a a group that got together to look at some opportunities, to look at some of the challenges that we have. The reality is we're a low city, and we're surrounded by water on almost every side. So we have some decisions to make. We can mitigate as much as we can, but we will always have risks in the city. We need to be cognizant of that fact, and we need to find ways to continue to elevate the houses where it's appropriate to do so, continue to build a levee system, and that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Cromer?
Thank you, Ms. Case. As past chairman of the House Insurance Committee, I understand the fundamentals of risk management and trying to mitigate losses for the payers, and in this case, primarily the payers of the National Flood Insurance Program. I also understand the importance of making sure that we have a sustainable, vibrant insurance industry in our community, so that homeowners and business owners can buy insurance at an affordable rate that won't put them out of business paying their premiums. The CPRA has been line item vetoed out of the governor's current budget, but that budget's not going to stand. We'll get past that in the legislature. But what I will do is work with Congressman Scalise and our congressional delegation in Washington to assure that we continue to receive funding that we need to build these levees and use state matching funds to do that, and also to assure that the National Flood Insurance Program is funded at a sustainable level that we can have affordable premium costs. Also push the federal government and our congressional delegation to assure that we have a long-term solution to the National Flood Insurance Program, so that it's funded into the future, so that property owners and mortgagees don't have to worry about their flood insurance being pulled from them at some point in the future.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Cusimano.
Thank you. As everyone knows, when it comes to flooding, we have rain events on their own and hurricanes that include wind and rain. During my years on the Slidell City Council, we have funded retention and detention ponds in an effort to capture as much water as possible during rain events. The city has received hazard mitigation grant money to improve drainage and the capacity of our pumping stations. The city will see the benefits of raising Highway 11 at the city limits, which is designed for hurricanes and tropical events that push water into our city. This has been a cooperative effort at the local, state, and federal levels. I will continue to work with our local and parish leaders to call upon congressmen and senators to give our homeowners some relief of their flood insurance by giving us credit for the levee protection has been built since Hurricane Katrina. We should and must be given credit for providing levee protection for our city as it meets Lake Pontchartrain. Our citizens deserve lower premiums. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, for this next question, we'll start with Mr. Clement. And the question is, how do you plan to expedite the completion of the Tammany Trace to Heritage Park? And does your plan include continuing the trace all the way to the St. Tammany Fishing Pier?
You know, you've really touched upon a nerve with that. When I look at the Tammany Trace and the success that the western side of the parish has experienced in building such beautiful facilities, pavilions, trails, and huts, and I look at our Tammany Trace as it comes into Slidell, if you look at where it was theoretically going to come in, back when this project was started 20 years ago, you go out there and you see a railroad track and you see weeds growing up high. I simply fail to understand the wisdom of how all that funding could have ended up on the western side of the parish, and this side of the parish has nothing. We don't have our trace complete. So one of the first things that I would do is I would find a way to ensure that we have the proper funding to complete the Tammany Trace, to bring it into Heritage Park. Now, it's a very contentious issue because the current path of the trace is now going through a residential section, and you have a lot of folks who are living in that area that are disturbed that's interfering with their quality of life, and it's interfering with their front yards. So I'm not quite sure what the strategy was when it was determined that that's how we would bring the trace in. But the trace is of vital importance to our families. It's an opportunity for us to ride bikes and exercise. I would love to have the opportunity to get on the trace at Heritage Park and perhaps ride to wherever the trace is going to lead, but we don't have that opportunity. That money, that funding was spent on the western side of the parish. We need to get right, we need to get our money on this side, we need to get it finished. Additionally, should it go out to the fishing pier, what I'd like to do is pull together some of our folks that are interested in the development of bike paths, and we have an opportunity to hear some kids put a plan together. Is it a potential to do that? Certainly. Would I like to see that? Of course.
Mr. Cromer.
Thank you. As a biker myself, a bicyclist, I guess you'd say, I don't have any others. I don't, not opposed to it, but I got run over by a car when I was in high school doing that, so I quit doing that. I love the Towne Trace. Wife and I have ridden the trace a number of times, from Slidell into Lacombe. We've gone to Lacombe and ridden to Mandeville, stopped and had a bite, came back. It's a beautiful and tremendous asset for our community. I've met people on the trace from Tennessee that were riding, had come down just to ride the trace. So I absolutely support the idea of completing the trace into our community and taking it all the way to the fishing pier. I love the idea of being able to do that. I will work with the parish to assure that we have the permits and the ability to get the trace into the city and then out of the city to get to the fishing pier. And I'll work within the city and our community to see what our citizens want, to see where they want the trace to be completed and to get to. I'll pursue the grant monies that we need. I intend to create a grant writer in the city to chase those kind of opportunities so that we don't have to increase taxes to do those kinds of things. I'd love to see our city become more bicycle friendly. I'd like to ride my bike to the corner store and pick up a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk. I wish it wasn't Walmart that was on the corner, but that's not something that we have any control of right now. But I fully support the Towne Trace, and as well as other bike trails or bike lanes within our city and traversing across north and south, east and west.
Mr. Cusimano.
Thank you. Currently, grants are pursued by various people within several different departments. I want to bring in an experienced grant writer to apply for every possible grant that will bring outside dollars into the city for projects like getting the Towne Trace completed all the way to the fishing pier. The city, in cooperation with the parish, will be extending the Towne Trace from its current endpoint at the intersection of West Hall and Woodlawn. Mayor Drennan has already selected the company to complete the survey and design phase, which will bring the trace along West Hall, then along Bayou Lane and into Heritage Park. The estimated cost of this phase is around $1.8 million, whereas the parish has set aside some funds for the project, and the Slidell City Council is set to vote on reallocating $600,000 at the next meeting, which is tomorrow night. Based on current projections, and if everything goes as planned, this phase should be completed in late 2019. I support expanding the trace to the fishing pier, with the city and parish currently working together on the route and funding for this project.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Brendan. I guess it did go back many years. I think my colleague said 20 years, it may be a little bit longer. This is a good example of thinking forward, thinking ahead. What happened was with the railroad, because they claim I'm the father of the Towne Trace, they came to Slidell and they said, we're going to abandon your railroad. The railroad that actually built this parish. I said, no, you're not. I was a police chief at the time. I said, no, you're not going to abandon it. I worked through the program, had federal legislation written, because I was not going to allow that 200-foot corridor, 31 miles long, be lost to the citizens of St. Anthony. So I'm the one that proceeded with that. Actually didn't have any money, got a grant to pay for it. use federal highway dollars and transferred them over to pedestrian bike paths and rails to trails program. What my colleague really doesn't seem to know, because he really wasn't involved in any of this, was that during that time, our game plan was, and it's in a brochure, it's in a pamphlet that we all produced, US 190 was to be 4-lane. So we owned the railroad that runs behind Rouse's, what used to be Albertsons, if the gentleman would bother to look. And what happened is, the state of Louisiana doesn't have $40 million to widen Highway 190. Because what we're going to do is bring it down and cross under. But as far back as Ben's administration, I kept going to them, and actually, Bruce, you can go to Camp Salmon if you ever go that way, right outside the city of Slidell, and have a lovely afternoon to spend it there at Camp Salmon, and you can get on the Tammany Trace. And there's a trailhead right there by the city of Slidell at North Shore Boulevard. So to say that all the money was spent on the west is not even factual. I can't spend, when I was parish president, money inside the city. So it was the city had to do that. So we brought the trace to Camp Salmon. The long-term goal will be that it will come behind Rouse's, come down Highway 11, and a tunnel will be built under the road as it expands and bring it right down into the city. But for now, what they're having to do is go down West Hall, and they've already done phase 1. And if you want more information, ask me about it. I appreciate it.
Okay. The next question, and let's see, this one will be for Mr. Cromer first. In the last few years, the city of Slidell and the parish have established incentives for big box stores and franchises to come to Slidell. In many cases, this has been a detriment to locally owned small businesses. What is your plan to level the playing field and incentivize local small business development to keep them competitive with the big boxes and franchises?
Well, as I said a minute ago, I would prefer Walmart not to be on every corner. I remember the day when I could go to the corner red and white grocery store and get a soda pop on my grandmother's account and walk out without ever putting a nickel on the counter. Those days are long gone, folks. But the big boxes are here. They're going to be here. They have driven some of our smaller mom and pop shops out of business. And the only way that I can determine that we could incentivize those big boxes to involve in the community is to give them incentives to, if you will, shop locally. If they're going to add to their store, or they're going to build their store, use a local contractor to build that. Don't use some big firm from Timbuktu to come into our community and take our jobs that our people could do. Buy your lumber and your metals and everything else, your concrete, locally. If you're gonna use produce, if you're gonna sell produce like Walmart in our area, buy locally. Buy locally sourced seafood. Utilize our community. That way you're not taking from the community completely, you're giving back and putting into the community. Now there's other opportunities for them to get involved and engaged in our community and serve. We have to encourage that to happen, and that would be through support, philanthropic support of our Little League ball fields, our any other affiliated social organizations that need support or help. Work with the Veterans Cemetery out here to sponsor a work day to clean up, things of that nature, to engage them in the community, but to give back to the community, not just take from our community. The only way we can get that done is if we would put some incentives when they come into town, into their contracts and into their property agreements.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Thank you. Large national retail establishments have their own marketing teams that evaluate which economies and locations match up to their customer base. Big retail stores will continue to come to market their goods and services to our citizens. However, I do not support giving incentives for large retail businesses to locate in our city while giving no incentives for our locally owned businesses. Our citizens have taken the risk, employed local people, and they need to be treated as fair as any company that wants to do business in the city. We have many local businesses that are thriving. Do we need a major shopping center in our area? Yes, that answer is correct. If they are not here, our citizens will go shop elsewhere. A large retail store generates larger sales tax and property tax that is needed for the city. Thank you.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Brenda. First off, through my experiences and journey throughout really the country, I've had the pleasure of meeting with other elected officials and get their insight on how do they help their local small businesses when you have the issue of the large national chains coming in. One of them I found was actually close, which was really interesting. It was in Gulfport, Mississippi. The mayor and I spent a lot of time together. And one of the things that they did was they used their community block grant money. Now we get an allocation directly to the city of Slidell. So there's that funding that's in place. But there's also community development funding through the state, through the Department of HUD. And what they did was they took that, those dollars, and they incentivized each one of the local small businesses that wanted to help them in their marketing and their business facilities. Also things like the internet that I talked about earlier. And I thought that was a really interesting idea. I think that the time of incentives for the big box stores is past. Typically those were used to get cash registers in so people could shop, local governments could get revenue going. And those dollars could only have been used for infrastructure, the roadway, the sewer and water that was provided. It actually could not be used for building a building or subsidizing the business that would be in the building. And the other one is the Department of Agriculture. They also have an economic development component, worked with them through the Regional Planning Commission on receiving dollars to do feasibility studies on our small businesses and how we help them here in our local area. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clement.
You know, we could sit here and say that we're not going to incentivize businesses to move into our area, and I think that would be folly. What we have to do is work with small companies and our small businesses to find ways that we can help them to be successful. The State Department of Economic Development has a program called Fast Start, and Fast Start was actually something that was created in St. Tammany Parish. It is an opportunity to quickly train up the workforce so that you'll have available workers for those companies that are coming in. Additionally, there are other grants, there are other incentives that the state of Louisiana will offer to small businesses. It's really difficult to level the playing field. And if you look, according to Bloomberg, you look at what's happening in our country relative to small and large businesses. Big boxes are hurting. We're losing Target, we're losing Academy. It's not that the big boxes are thriving so much, it's that our world is changing. And the techniques and the ideas that were in place 20 years ago are not going to work today. We have to look at what's going on in the world. What's going on in the world is you have e-commerce. If you want to support your small businesses, you have to shop small. You have to be there. You have to show up and you have to help them. So we all have a role to play in the success of all of our businesses in town. We have to be there, we have to shop, we have to spend money, and we have to keep them in business. Now, these small companies, it would be really great if they want to go off and do computer training, learn some new software. But most of the mom and pops or the 3 and 4 employee companies don't have the opportunity to leave their business and to go out and to leave for a day and go get some training. So I will look at the resources that exist within the city, because as a part of my assessment, I will look at every department to see if we cannot find a way where we can use some city resources to go into these businesses to help advance their business skills.
Thank you. Let's see, we'll start with the next question. We're going to start with Mr. Cusimano. It's a rather long one. In 1985, the sales tax agreement with the parish made a lot of sense. It prevented the then viable North Shore Square, from sending 100% of its tax money to the parish. In exchange, the city received assistance with the expansion of Airport Road and perhaps some other nominal activity. However, the agreement was no longer necessary in 2005 when it was renewed at the current 50-50 split. And furthermore, the parish gives absolutely nothing of value back to the city in exchange for their 50% share of sales tax from affected businesses. Not only is it illegal in the state of Louisiana to give away public resources for nothing in return, it is just plain a dumb deal for our city. If this agreement were not in place today, Slidell could very well be in a very strong financial position. What do you plan on doing to rectify this situation, and how will you go about it?
Yeah, that is a very long question. Aside from projects funded by the federal government, the city has very little money to do capital projects. The major reason has been the sales tax sharing agreement with the parish. It has nothing to do with the mall, since it was already developed and in the city collecting its 2%. When the agreement was signed in 1986, the parish had no sales tax. When the parish tax was approved, their 2% sales tax was to be collected on both inside and outside the city, resulting in a 4% local tax. Businesses that wanted to be annexed into the city for water and sewer had a big problem with that. Businesses delayed development at that time we needed substantial retail. The city offered the parish the 50-50 sales tax agreement as the way to fix the problem. At the time, the benefits clearly outweighed what we gave up, even though the terms were not fair to the city. In 2006, when it came time to renew the sharing agreement, the retail reality had changed. We were recovering from Katrina and needed all the money that our citizens had approved. In 2006, spending 50% of our sales tax to the parish made no sense. The city provides all the service and the parish provides nothing. I was not on the council in 2006, but I have learned from other council members that the parish would not agree to give the city a larger share. Even worse, the parish would not agree to let the city recover costs of installing water and sewer before taking their share. In the end, the city agreed to the extension for 25 years. The person from the parish who in fact lived in the city limits of Slidell, who had the final say, and who would not agree to give the city a larger share of the sales tax, at the time was parish president Kevin Davis. Imagine what Slidell could have done with a greater share. As mayor, I would try to negotiate the agreement to get a greater share.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Yes, thank you. My colleague doesn't have, he wasn't around, so he doesn't have his facts straight. 2085, but actually 2006, when it came up for renewal, the city came to us and said, and that's why I don't understand the question, because it's really not, I apologize, but it's not correct in the question. The city requested $10 million. The mayor came to me and said, look, we'd like to renew the agreement if you'll give us $10 million. I said, okay. So we did exactly what the city asked us to do. And it had to be voted on by the city council and approved by them. So that's what was done. Your dilemma today is that the agreements that they wanted, that they signed, it's all public record, is for $10 million, and they got the $10 million. Where some errors were made, I think in the long term for us in the city, is that the $10 million was for the Fremo Center. You were getting, contrary to Mr. Cusimano's comments, you're getting 100% at the mall. You got 100% of 2 cents. There was no sharing with the parish, okay? There was sharing over at Target on the other side, and years later, because the city went out into the parish and they built a building, and you have to share it, because it's 4 cents. But if anybody can help solve this problem, you're probably looking at it. Those members that are still there on parish government, I think that we can reach an agreement on other issues that we have here in the parish. And those being transportation, recreation, and others, because I certainly know all of the funding mechanisms that the parish has. And I'll work to find those solutions. But the reality is that the city government asked for $10 million and the parish gave it to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clement?
I was a small child when that contract was signed. You know, that's right. So what I would say is this. you sit down and you make a deal. And at the time when this deal was structured, it made sense. So I'm not gonna throw a rock at anybody to say, we should never have done it, this was a bad deal, whatever. It's a contract. It's nothing more than a contract. It's something that can be negotiated. I do have issue with the renewal. Now, the renewal disturbs me because my colleague, Mr. Davis, just said that for $10 million, we'll give you your $10 million and life will go on and we'll get a sales tax split, but not only at the businesses that are there, whenever we annex anything else in, we're gonna take 50% of your tax money going forward. So we were sold out for $10 million, okay? Now, I don't know the exact amount of money that we could generate on an annual basis, but I would bet over a 20-year period, it would be larger than $10 million. And I've had the opportunity to meet with some experts on this to discuss the financial aspects of it. So here's where we are. We're in a deal, but you know what? Deals are ink on paper. It's a matter of pulling the parties together and saying, this has to be renegotiated. We use everything we have in our armamentarium to sit down and try to find a win-win between the parish and the city to renegotiate this deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Case. I don't think there's anything else need to be said about this. I agree with these fine gentlemen. When the agreement was renegotiated in 2005, there were some extenuating circumstances that were going on at the time that haven't been brought to light. I'm not going to get into it. I was on the council in 2005 when the agreement was signed. It no longer makes sense. I'll agree with that. And I've got a fairly good working relationship since I've been in the legislature with parish government, with the parish administration. And I feel confident that given the opportunity, level heads can sit around the table and come up with an agreement that makes sense for all parties that are involved. There's things that we need in the city limits that affect folks in the parish, that being our major drainage W14 and W15 canals that impacts the parish whenever they clog up and the water backs up into the parish. There's infrastructure, roads and drainage that people come into the city from out in the parish to shop. If they can't get here because of our roads, then they'll have to go someplace else. So there are items that we can come to consensus on and work together, I believe, to put together an agreement that's been beneficial for the city and the parish in sharing those taxes that are generated within the city limits.
Thank you very much. All right, we are going to start with the next question with Mr. Davis. This regards our train station. Our current train station, which is owned by the city of Slidell, has a platform that is in desperate need of updating, as well as 2 vacant spaces that are severely underutilized. How will your administration address these needs to expand the usage of the train station, and would you consider adding a transportation department to study and work toward creating a multimodal transportation facility for this area?
Well, I think the first part of your question is, speaker on?
I'm sorry?
The speaker on?
Mine's not working.
All right. How about that? Now we can hear? Okay. Yeah, the question's in reference to intermodal at the transportation at the center here. Yeah, huge problem. We had the vignette place there, but there was no parking. People couldn't get to the facility. So I think, yes, first off, I have a lot of experience in transportation. So that's one arena, even today, that I've worked with for the city. I've already got them about $2 to $3 million of federal funding to help us with some roadways here in Slidell. One of them is a new roundabout at Country Club. The other is out at I-10. One is a turning lane at McDonald's there as you come off of Lindbergh. But more importantly, transportation is a key component to economic development also, as we see right there. As you can see on Gauls, where the Wendy's was, all 3 of the businesses are closed. Why is that? Because you can't get in and get out. So certainly in our engineering department, the way I have here with Blaine, what I will do is increase that department with the transportation person as soon as we can fund that. Certainly I'll provide that leadership and role from my experiences dealing with transportation as a consultant today. So I think that we can make the train depot into an intermodal facility. I think that we can get a transportation parking for that facility so that we can rent the additional spaces. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's why I support the Scouts. Thank you very much. Our train station is a jewel. It's something that has to be polished, though. We have an opportunity to, of course, increase the parking. It's abysmal. We also have an opportunity to find some merchants that could go in there and make it a vibrant place. So I had an opportunity in my role as chairman of the Economic Development Foundation to work with several members of the community on an intermodal transportation committee. What we were looking at is trying to revitalize the train station, to repair the platforms, to find a way to bring transportation from Slidell to Hammond to connect the two Amtrak stations, and to look at how we could improve that transportation loop so that it would be easier for people to move through our area. We made some progress on that. We didn't quite get finished on that, but you know, that's a challenge for the future, and I see people in this room that have worked very hard on that. We have an opportunity there to revitalize that area. That's just, you know, to me, it's just another part of Old Town, and it's something that is not meeting its full potential. What I plan to do, as far as that's concerned, is to bring in a national development company to come in and do a strategic master plan for Old Town, and to look at how we could best utilize those businesses, the ones that are open and closed, and those properties that are underutilized at this time.
Check your mic, Craig, I think it's on.
We're back on.
Thank you, Ms. Brenda. I pulled a fast one on you guys. I hit the override button here and I didn't even.
That would happen.
Sorry, Kevin. It wasn't unintentional, please.
That's what they all say.
I hit it again, so. I might have killed my own. You know, the Old Town train station is an underutilized resource we have. And I would like to see the Old Town Merchants Association and our citizens come up with an idea of what they would like to see done in that building. I mean, we have tried commercial space there. We've had one success in that one end of the building. The other end is vacant, and I don't know why it would be vacant. So I think that there may be some better utilizations for that space to create opportunities for museums or art galleries or just general meeting space that would be available to Boy Scouts or anybody that had to want to do a wedding reception in there. It's a beautiful space. So we have to create opportunities with input from the citizens on that. As far as intermodal transportation, I'm not sure that we need a transportation director, which was mentioned in the question, but I do think that we could hire a transportation consultant to give us some guidance as to how we could better utilize that lot, that rail spur. There's people in town that do that, and we could shop locally, if you will, and use local engineering firms to give us guidance as to how that could best be used. So I support using some consultants to get us a better plan, but I prefer to use consultants that are local than having to reach outside the community if possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brenda. Sound like that Greg and I are about on the same page, so I will seek money to upgrade the train station platform. Both state and federal money may be available to do this. The second floor of the train station may be better suited for a dedicated purpose such as work and display space for artists or a train museum. For the space on the south end, the city could attain the service of a real estate company through an RFP to locate someone to lease the space. I, along in the city council, would determine a fair rent for the space. Expanding parking on the south end of the train station is not an option due to the lack of space, and you got the a railroad crossing and a red light. So it's gonna be very impossible to put a parking lot there. And, we could mark spaces in the existing parking lot designated for businesses on the other end of the train depot. At this time, I am not in favor of adding a transportation department, but I would consider hiring a consultant to evaluate the viability of a transportation department. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. All right, thank you. The next question, I'm going to start with Mr. Clement. There was a time when Slidell, Louisiana had more recreational ball fields per capita than any city in America. That time is long gone. Since then, we have been far surpassed by neighboring cities, which are chosen as host cities to major regional and national tournaments. These types of recreation centers bring enormous economic activity to a local area, much of which is external money. Would you support plans to make Slidell a leader in this, and how would you go about it?
I would absolutely support it, and I will tell you that I believe we've gotten behind the curve on sports. There are so many travel teams now where kids are moving, we used to have, we had SBBA, SYFA, these were wonderful assets in our community, and thousands of our kids were able to utilize those facilities. It's changing. While those are still wonderful organizations and they do a great job, we also have a new dynamic out there, and that new dynamic is travel teams. Travel teams will come into your city, they will use your hotels, they'll go to your restaurants, but we don't have this complex that we need to bring and to attract this type of activity. I've been working with the Tennis Association in Slidell. There's nowhere in the regional area that has any type of regional tennis complex where you could bring in these travel teams and once again bring economy into the city. So what I would propose is the Triple P, and the Triple P is public-private partnership. You look at public land, you look at public resources, you look at private resources and investment, you put these together, and that's how you will be able to develop something that will bring our city and our sports activities to the next level.
Mr. Cromer?
Thank you, Ms. Case. I was coaching and on the board of Slidell Youth Soccer Club when we held the last state tournament here. Brought 28 different teams from around the state, and it was a huge economic generator for our community. I absolutely support increasing the capacities that we have in the community, but traditionally, everything that we've got in Slidell, it's privately funded and managed by volunteer organizations. SBBA is private, youth football is private, basketball has even built their own gym now that they're utilizing. SYSC youth soccer utilizes Fritchie fields and some fields that we have in the community. I would love to be able to grow that. Those are all thriving organizations, and they do a good job with private dollars that are donated into the system, as well as volunteer hours that maintain the efforts that they have to put their leagues together and maintain the facilities. I'll work with each of those leagues to try to increase the funding that the city gives them if we can in any such way, but also to go out and help them track grant monies or opportunities. Youth soccer used to chase grants from the United States Soccer Organization year after year. We just never quite were able to get the grant because we didn't have the land. If the city had a piece of ground and would dedicate it to youth soccer, they may be able to come up with a grant that would take care of putting together soccer fields and soccer facilities. So, our community has spoken very clearly about recreational taxes. It's been voted down a couple of times, and we have to respect that as a leader of the community. You have to respect the voice of the community and what they stood for on that. So I'll absolutely support growing the league and the capacities within all of the leagues, but it'll be through private dollars and donations and grant monies.
Excuse me.
I would love to develop these types of facilities and activities you are talking about, but this takes a lot of money. Many of the larger facilities are now run by rec districts where homeowners pay a property tax to fund the district. A rec district district tax was brought, the recreational districts where the homeowners pay a property tax to fund the district. A recreational district tax was brought to the voters recently for a one district located just outside the city limits, and it was defeated. Slidell has little surplus funds, and I would not want to ask the voters to approve a new tax. The city has many ball fields, soccer fields, gyms, and tennis courts. When you combine the ones maintained by the city and the ones maintained by the sports organizations, they are just not located in the same place. With the cooperation of the city and the sports organizations, we can attract events that can match our existing facilities. We could possibly provide a shuttle service to get them to the different facilities if needed. For example, they need to get from Richard Park to John Slidell Park. We could take them through Old Town and introduce them to areas of the city they might not otherwise venture into. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Brenda. Certainly, you know, I have a son sitting over here, he's 12, waving a hand. He loves sports, so, you know, I don't think any of us are not going to support those activities. And, you know, I agree with Greg. I think that I remember years ago when we were looking at here on the east side, let's see, some of my colleagues on the parish government here, we held many meetings in reference with the partners, all the ones that Greg mentioned. And all those are privately run facilities who were very nervous about tax proposals, which I certainly would not support. So I think if we could come together with all of the different activities, soccer and football and basketball and all the like, to look at some kind of public-private partnership, I certainly would support that. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, realizing we won't be able to get to all the questions, we're going to combine some questions, and we're going to concentrate on some of those that we got the most often. The next question I'm going to ask, let's see, our next candidate will be Mr. Cromer to start with this one, and we will go at number 11. What are your plans for the opioid epidemic in our city?
Well, the opioid epidemic, I'm thinking academic here. The opioid epidemic, that's a tongue twister, it's a national problem. It's not just in our community. We've seen it for years. Part of it it goes back to the mental health resources that we have in the community. First and foremost, our first responders, the police department, the sheriff, the state police, they're the folks that interact on a daily basis with the people that are having these issues, these problems. And I will fully support and fund any efforts they have to eliminate these problems in our community, which would be drug enforcement. I also have been supportive of the grant program that the District Attorneys Association has provided in putting naloxone in the hands of our first responders and our police officers. So when they go to a scene of an overdose, they've got the opportunity to try to save an individual or a victim of an overdose if they're given that drug in a timely fashion. There's also a program that the Sheriff's Department, or maybe the Police Department has, and it's called Angels. Clement has it. It's something that I would love to see in our community. What it does, it provides people that have addiction problems, whether it be opioid, alcohol, whatever, any abuse type of problem, to walk into the police station and hand over their stash and say, look, I have a significant problem here, can you help me? Without fear of retribution, they're given the opportunity to get themselves on a good track and recover. I would love to see that program in Slidell and fully support that if we give the opportunity.
I will continue to properly fund the police department and make sure that we have given the proper tools and training to deal with the opioid crisis. Since this is not an epidemic just in Slidell, we need to work with the Sheriff's Department and our neighboring municipal police departments to take a regional approach. I will partner with the hospitals, the coroner's office, mental health facilities, and community service organizations to make sure the people that are addicted and their families know where to go for help. I fully support and will promote Operation Angel. We need to work with our schools to educate our youth and youth about the dangers of the use of opioids. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's already been said, but certainly first and foremost is to make sure our first responders have what they need dealing with the issue, and continue that support. The program that they're doing in Covington certainly is one, but I had some meetings recently with private sector. This truly is an addiction problem. And again, we don't want to be arresting individuals to put them into the jail. What we need to do is offer those assistance and help them through this time that they're having. And then make sure that we monitor them. So the program I talked to you about earlier, where we used the suicide model, could be the same plan. So what I would do very quickly after being elected is to bring the private sector and public sector together so that we could start that process of the responding and the services provided to those citizens who have this addiction and try to help them. Thank you.
As a healthcare professional who's had to see this firsthand for decades, it's disturbing to see where our country is right now relative to the use of these drugs. When Big Pharma promoted those to physicians, it was going to be a panacea for many different conditions. And what happened was the overprescribing has led to sometimes very innocent people becoming addicted to these particular products. I will tell you that there are three parts to this. The first part is access. It's been too easy to get the drugs, and the prescribers have been very liberal in their writing of the prescriptions to the patients. What has happened in Louisiana is we've finally begun to get some legislation, and I compliment our legislators. We are tightening down on the number of those particular drugs that can be, the quantity of drugs that can be dispensed at a time, and the time period that those can be prescribed for. So we're making some really good steps. But those are only two very important parts of it. The final part, and the part that we really don't have right as a community, a state, or our nation right now, is the fact that we've underfunded our treatment of this disease. And for us to be successful, we need to continue to find ways and find funding. The good news is that we believe the federal government has finally woken up and realized that we have an enormous crisis in this country with this particular problem. And funding, we are told, is on the way. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, for the next question, and this will go to Mr. Cusimano first. We're going to jump ahead to number 19. How would you position Slidell to play a stronger role in regional planning, such as St. Tammany Parish, LED, GNO Inc., Greater New Orleans Foundation, New Orleans Regional Planning Commission, Mississippi Gulf Coast, and Stennis?
Thank you. As the largest city in St. Tammany Parish, we need to gain membership to every organization that is part of an economic development and can provide infrastructure creation. I will regularly attend those meetings and cooperate with the other entities whenever possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Yes, certainly by taking an active role in the regional planning first through the groups that you just mentioned. Actually, I served as either chairman or of an officer of regional planning for 5 parishes for 24 years, and have a great relationship with all the members in the committee. That's where we can find additional transportation federal dollars that we can use here in the city of Slidell. An example of roadway that could be built, you can receive 80% of the dollars through the Regional Planning Commission, and the city only has to put up 20%. We've been successful so far in the last year working with the city and myself, almost $2 million and it looks like we'll be able to do that for the coming years. But all of those, GNO Inc., all of those are key components: economic development, LED, Greater New Orleans Foundation, and certainly Stennis, Friends of Stennis. I don't know if you all saw, but we really need to get moving quickly. Stennis put out a bid proposal for development of 1,200 acres at Stennis. Makes me very nervous that somebody is going to submit proposals in Mississippi for industrial development and development in general on those 1,200 acres. So we need to move very quickly and fast in reference to those companies, and how do we get them to locate here in Slidell. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Towne.
I've always believed that the first rule in life is you gotta show up. And so for us to be a player in these different organizations, we have to get representation. We need to be with, that's Partners for Stennis, Mr. Davis. We need to be with Partners for Stennis to make sure that we have a voice there. We need to be at the Regional Planning Commission so that we can have a voice in what needs to happen here. We have an opportunity to put very experienced, knowledgeable individuals who live in our city on these different commissions. We need to make sure that we put the right people there with the right background so that they can advocate for the city of Slidell. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cromer.
Thank you, Ms. Case. When I was at MISU doing business development work and repurposing that facility, our partners in what we brought to MISU were Louisiana Economic Development Authority, GNO Inc., on the Gulf Coast with Partners for Stennis, we developed the MISU Stennis Corridor to create economic opportunities in our state as well as Mississippi and bring business in there. So I know all of the key players in all of these organizations. Being in the legislature, I've had a good opportunity to interact with LED and help them with legislation they've needed before to create incentives for businesses, so I'm familiar with it. I've been involved in these organizations. I've been a player in these organizations, so it'll be easy to take what our city's doing now and drive that forward and be at the table when these meetings occur. I'll be at a meeting in February, around 1st of February, about 1,100 acre development over in Stennis. If they are successful in what they do and they bring business and industry into that 1,100 acres, there's no reason that some of that couldn't be an offshoot into our community. If we're there and we know who they're talking to, we can get in front of them also and sell, slide out to those same people. We just have to be at the table and know where the action's at.
Thank you. All right, the next question, we will start with Mr. Davis. It's going to be number 20. Recently, UNO and LSU announced the opening of an adult educational facility in Slidell. How will this impact our community, and how will your administration support this facility?
Thank you, Brenda. I'd say Margot was here, and I know she helped work on that. Margot, thank you. Great job, and the other team members that worked on it. Really, I'm excited by this what I think is a great opportunity for us from adult education here in Slidell. It's a component that we needed for our adult educations when we're talking about economic development. And they'll be partnered with other partners. So I'm a big supporter of what you've done and what I envision will happen in the future as we continue to build upon UNO and LSU's adult education. Thank you.
I would add to that education of anyone who is trying to advance themselves or trying to be prepared to go into the workforce is critical for our success in being able to lure companies here. Not only is this project notable, I would say welcome back, because before Katrina we had universities that were present and teaching, and I'm thrilled that they're back. This will help our city become more competitive. When people look about where they're going to move, they want to know that you're going to have good schools for your children. Is there higher education? Is there good health care? all of those different types of things. Public safety goes without saying with the police force. So certainly would support it, having had the benefit of receiving a master's degree from a university that NASA brought in several years ago, where the Florida Institute of Technology actually came in and used the rocket scientists, they used professors, and many of us in the city were able to, in a classroom environment, get our advanced degrees. So I'm all over it. I think it's something that we need to continue to expand, and hopefully our children, by utilization of the new STEM college in Towne, will realize the benefits. Little known fact, the STEM college, which, we talk about adult education, but these are young adults that are out of the STEM college. They are preparing, there are more students from Slidell in the STEM college than there are from any other area in the parish. And I think that is an exciting fact. Those kids are going to come out of there and they're going to be able to go into the workforce very quickly. So education is a key to us becoming a more vibrant and viable community.
Thank you. Mr. Cromer?
Thank you, Ms. Case. As somebody that went back to college at 56 years old and earned my master's degree, I understand the importance of education and training. I talked to Ms. Galot and some folks a couple of weeks ago about this opportunity at LSU and UNO being in our community, and I think it's a tremendous asset for our community. Number one, they're going to be located embedded in our community so that if there is an opportunity to bring businesses in, they'll have firsthand knowledge of what that business is going to be and be able to train workforce in skill sets that are needed for any new business or industry that comes in. They can work hand in hand with LED, with the Fast Start program and the incumbent worker training programs to put people to work as we bring industries into the community. So I think it's a tremendous asset and selling point for the city of Slidell to be able to train workforce that will be satisfying the needs of businesses that are coming in.
Mr. Cusimano?
Thank you. The city of Slidell has provided the classroom space and I will continue to do so. I will continue to offer I will work with them to offer additional classes in the future. With classes being held locally, it is beneficial for the employers and the employees by increasing the person's education and decreasing the student's travel time. I also met with Mrs. Margot and Mr. Levy, and this is a very vital part for re-education or taking a person who's in the workforce to get some more education, get him retraining and back into the workforce. And depending on it doesn't matter what age it is that person is. If he's an older gentleman like myself in the 50s, or a younger person who's just starting out, we definitely need to retrain some of our employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to jump into question number 27 now. This is going to be for Mr. Clement. What do you feel best describes or identifies Slidell? And would you hire a marketing director and or branding consultant to create and build a brand for the city of Slidell?
I'd like to answer the second question first. Yes, I would hire a branding consultant or a marketing consultant, whatever you want to call it. If you look at what many major companies have done, business have done, your brand should evolve over time to reflect what your city or what your business is. We have a very stale brand, and I mean no disrespect to the people that put it together, because I think I was a part of that. But the challenge is to try to make us more contemporary to what we really want to reflect and project out to what our community is. So I don't know that we need a marketing director. Maybe we do. I'd like to get in, when elected, I'd like to get into office and I'd like to go in. I will do an assessment of all the departments. We'll find out from the leaders in there what are our opportunities, what are our weaknesses, what do we need to look at, where do we need to move this the city forward. But as far as hiring a professional to come in and do that, I'd rather pay that money and then not have to pay an ongoing salary that would put more additional burden on the citizens.
Slidell, open, friendly, and welcoming. We're wide open to do business with whomever would want to come. We're vibrant, we're friendly. You bump into somebody in the grocery store and they're your new friend, you're talking to them. So we're open, friendly, and welcoming. I think one of the mayor's first jobs is marketing, selling his community. You're the face and the voice of the community everywhere you go, whether you want to be or not. Sometimes when you go in the grocery store, you may not want to be, but you are. So you've always got to have that persona and put your best foot forward. I think, and I'm not a marketing major, but I'd be willing to hire a consultant to give some guidance to number one, to give some customer service training to all of the employees in the city so that they understand that they are the first face that a lot of people see whenever they interface with the community. They walk into the permits office and you see the lady behind the counter. If she's having a bad day and frowning and not happy, then it reflects upon our city. So emphasis would be on every city employee for them to understand the importance of their persona and how they present themselves as part of the city. Consultants can help you with that, but I don't think we need a marketing director as such to pay another salary and benefits for an individual to do that. That's what you're paying the mayor for. And if I'm elected your mayor, I promise you I will be out doing that on a daily basis.
From my point of view, one of the best things that describes Slidell is family. You have multiple generations that continue to make Slidell their home. I do not have a specific intentions to hire a marketing director or a branding consultant. We are known as the Camellia City, but through tourism, I want to point out all the different things that Slidell has to offer and not be restricted to one brand. The marketing of the city will also be done by me and or an economic development director. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Yes, thank you. I tend to agree. I think the consensus is I don't know that I would hire somebody to be the marketing director. But one of the things that I want to do that I think is critical is for us to develop a brand for the city. And how would I go about doing that? One of the questions is before the 100 days is I would want to host those public forum meetings about a Vision 2035. So each one of us could develop the plans and for the future of Slidell. And it would be all components: recreation, economic development, aesthetics, transportation. I did that with the parish called 2020. It was a great success. The first couple of meetings, we had over 1,000 people who showed up because they cared about where our future was going. So that's one of the things that you'll see in my brochure I want to do immediately, Vision 2035. And that will develop our marketing strategy for the future for the city of Slidell. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is going to be the final question, so we can give our candidates their time for their final wrap up. We're going to combine questions 30 and 31 for the last question. And we're going to start with Mr. Cromer. Those questions are, what will be accomplished in your first 100 days with regard to your administration, as well as for current city projects? And all too often, what a candidate promises during the campaign does not always hold true after the election. If elected, specifically, what will you do to gain the trust of those who voted for one of the other candidates?
Thank you, Ms. President. First 100 days. I've got an excellent working relationship with the mayor currently. My first task will be to make a smooth transition. We've got $100 million worth of projects that are on the books that are ongoing right now. I want to assure that that doesn't slow down. We want to get our infrastructure improved, corrected, fixed as soon as possible. So the first task is to make sure that we hit the ground, boots running, and keep those projects going. Another task that I want to do, because 4 years is a short period of time, whether you believe it or not, whenever you take office, so you can't waste any time. I want to come in the first 6 months and create some what's known as Lean Six Sigma events to streamline every process and every function in the city of Slidell. You know, it may take 75 steps to get a permit in Slidell. Maybe we can lean that down to 35 steps, cut it in half, which saves you time, saves you effort, and gets people that want to invest money in your community quicker into the process of putting money into the community. So that's the first 100 days. What will I do to gain the confidence of the community back? Every one of my push cards has my cell number on it. It's the first cell number I ever received whenever I bought my first cell phone, and whenever I am put in a box, I'll probably put that cell phone and that cell number in the box with me. So if you need me or want to talk to me, if you keep that card, you'll get me. Now, I may not answer immediately, but I promise you I'll call you back and respond to you. So open, honest, transparent is what I expect to be, and I'm going to be available to our community.
Thank you. Mr. Cusimano.
Thank you. The first part, 100 days, after the election, I would consider it very important to work towards a smooth transition. In doing so, I would name a person to head my transition team, which I will also be part of. Keeping current city projects moving forward is the utmost importance. I will review existing projects and ensure that it will be completed in an efficient manner. I would like to be able to keep the many talented people employed in the city government, but at the same time, I would consider people with good experience, people that could bring new ideas, who can expand the way we do business and do it more efficient manner. One of the most important assets of the city is its employees, and engaging them is the utmost importance. Therefore, I will begin the process to meet with all employees. As the mayor and the council work so closely together, I will meet with the incumbent and newly elected council members to discuss their vision and how we can work together to achieve. And the second part of the question, how often a candidate gain the trust of people who didn't vote for you? I want to gain the trust of every voter, regardless of whether you voted for me or not. If elected, I'm going to hit the ground running, operate in a fiscal responsible manner, use code enforcement to keep our city beautiful. Citizens are like our customers. We will treat them with respect. I have held positions for several elected offices during the past 20 years. Before and after I was elected, I never made a promise, with the exception of promising to do the best job I can do while in the office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Yes, thank you. First, as I already mentioned, in the first 100 days would be the visioning process, 2035. It'd be your plan, what we're going to do for the future. So we would host those meetings. Not only would it be meetings that you could attend, but also use social media so that you could respond. And that brings number two, the first thing I want to do is rework all of our social media. I don't know if you've been online, but you know, we can buy anything we want online and have it shipped to our home or in any place in the country, but I can't get a permit online. So we're going to fix that. That'll be the first things that we do. We're going to go through for citizens to be able to communicate. When I was parish president, you could actually send in a work order from the computer tonight, 8 o'clock. Ditch, pothole, send it to us. We'll check it. It'll stay on the system. You could go in tomorrow to see that it was there. You can then track it and see when it's completed. You actually can use that system and put a map so people can see it from a bigger picture. Where are your most of your problems coming from? So we need to redo that whole system in the way we think about how we respond to our local government and make it easy for you. We close at 4 o'clock out here. Well, I know when I worked, I don't get home until 6. So I don't have time to get up here. So I want to make it easy for you to be able to go online and do the things that you need to do. I remember arguing with the Department of Transportation about buying our tags. He said, no, you need to come do that in person. I said, why would we need to do it in person? I can upload my driver's license and send it to you. And you can send me a new one. I don't have to drive to Baton Rouge or go stand in a line out here. Same thing for city government. We need to go into the 21st century and use all that capability that we have so it's easier for our citizens to communicate directly to us. If I got a second for part two was, I've already experienced that because I was a guy from the East when I was parish president. what you do is make sure that all of our citizens know that their voice is important, and you allow their input into the decision process, and you ask them for that. And that's how you build that credibility with your constituency, those that didn't vote for you, to know that we're heading in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clement?
As a senior executive in an organization with over 2,000 employees, we use specific skills when we go in to analyze a situation. And one of those skills is you go in and you do assessments and you listen. My first 100 days will be a listening campaign where I meet with the leaders in each of the departments. I make it a personal pledge to meet with every employee in employee forums to find out what is it that they need to do their job better. Do they need tools? Do they need training? Do they have what they need to work? Additionally, I will hold town hall meetings so that I can get feedback, ideas, and suggestions from the community as relative to the direction of where we want to take the city. Now, what we have learned in the industry I'm coming from as a senior executive, we were looking at 5-year plans, and we realized that the world is so volatile and things are changing so quickly that you need to have a 1-year plan before you can have a 25-year plan. You need to address what's in front of you. You need to take care of the problems that we have today, and we need to fix the systems that are in place. My colleagues have already mentioned Lean Six Sigma. Those are excellent techniques, and I will use those systems. And advancing technology, certainly that's something that we have an opportunity to do. I will tell you that our most important asset in the city is our employees. And for those successful businesses, they find a way to engage that workforce so that they will be able to do the best job that they can and that they want to do a good job. As your mayor, I will lead with integrity. I will lead by example, and I'm the person whose integrity cannot be bought. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, all of you. Each of you will have 2 minutes to wrap up, and we'll start with Mr. Cusimano in our usual rotation. So you have the 2 minutes. You can either finish your question that you
Yes.
get to answer, or just however you like to summarize. So
Yes,
go ahead.
I want to go back to question 3, where I really stumbled there. Please list the at least 3 types of economic development solutions you would like to see in Slidell. Also, please tell us how you would go about tracking them. Why you are the best person to recruit them, and what measurable outcomes would you consider necessary for these new adventures? As mayor, it's up to me and my administration to identify potential businesses that will be willing to relocate to Slidell with the potential of higher paying jobs. But I also want to create an economic development board consisting of non-paid volunteers and business leaders that have invested in Slidell to assist me in this undertaking. I will seek out and identify businesses willing to redevelop existing structures. Some of the buildings in Old Town have been redeveloped by using the historic preservation grants, and I will seek out investors in hope of continuing this. Being close to the interstate system makes Slidell a perfect fit for a distribution center. Ones that have been built around us should have been developed here. As mayor, I will find out why they were not developed here and take that knowledge to entice similar businesses. Attracting businesses to locate inside the city is a plus. But even if they are not inside the city, they help our community, people and the community. Much of our economy comes down to salesmanship. I've been a salesman for most of my adult life. In addition, I have 2 other key characteristics. I know Slidell, I love Slidell, and I've always been on Slidell's side, not just occasionally when it's convenient to fulfill an agenda. Thank you.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Question number, it actually wasn't a question, it was about our many years in politics. I don't know if you all saw that one on the bottom. I thought it was an interesting question because actually in my case, 24 years of service is exciting. I learned so much and had the great honor to work with so many great people around our state and on a federal and regional perspective. And I never thought about a direction. For those that don't know, I actually ran for mayor in the early 90s because I love the city. I want to see it prosper. I want to see our citizens be able to have those jobs, those career jobs that I talked about. And I'm excited to bring what I think are new opportunities to Slidell to enhance our city. I think that with that knowledge and experience on a state and federal level, I certainly can hit the ground running. I would ask for your vote and support number 16 on March 24th. Thank you.
I want to thank each of my colleagues tonight that are sitting here on the dais with me for their lifetime of public service. And I will tell you that it is not an easy job, and I do respect them for that. I will tell you also that, in my opinion, we're at a crossroads. We have an opportunity in Slidell to either go forward or to stay where we are. My campaign, when I meet with the people, when I go door to door, I let people know that I am the person who will bring the new ideas, who will bring the city forward, who will use the skills and techniques of a senior executive, which is what the mayor's job is, in addition to a salesman and many other facets of it. But you need a seasoned, experienced, qualified executive leader to run the city. I am that person to do the job. I will work tirelessly to advance the causes in Slidell. I will represent you with dignity and with honor, and I will never embarrass you. My number is lucky 13. And yes, it will be.
It's my lucky number.
Not in this race. I appreciate your support. I would love your vote. I will do the right thing for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brennan. Thank you, folks, for hanging in here with us for 2 hours. Sometimes it's like watching paint dry, probably. I had some ideas, but I'm gonna go back to what Mr. Davis talked about too. You know, the question is why, after many years in politics, with the goal of a politician always being progressing and moving to a higher office, why do you essentially seek an office that's essentially moving the opposite direction of a career politician? You know, I don't consider myself a career politician, and I don't consider going to the mayor's office a step backwards. I've never held a full-time elected position. If I'm elected mayor of Slidell, it's a full-time elected position. I get to devote all of my talents, time, and energy to being the mayor of the city of Slidell, the CEO of the city of Slidell, running our community. I don't see that as a step back. I don't consider myself a career politician, but I've served 5.5 years on the city council. It gave me a unique insight into the city budget and city functions that I'm bringing to the table. I served 10 years in the Louisiana legislature. That's given me a unique insight as to what state and federal regulations, what the impacts can be on the city, and how it can either stifle or stimulate growth within our community. I think I've gotten the experience from my professional life in the private sector. I've been able to create coalitions that have been able to achieve common goals. That was what I did at Michoud. I integrated the smartest engineers in the world to build space shuttle external tanks. Now, nobody ever accused me of being the smartest pencil in the box, but I sure could pick them out quick and get them to work together to create a common goal, to reach a common goal and to move our space program forward. I've been in government for 16 years now, and I feel like I've got the skill sets that we need at this time in the history of Slidell to move our community forward with a common goal of safety, infrastructure, and creating job opportunities within our community so that our folks can live, stay, play, and work here. My name is Greg Cromer. I'm asking for your vote on March 24th. Promise you I won't let you down.
So let's give these candidates another big round of applause. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Drive safely and don't forget to vote on March 24th.